Hi, and welcome to Baking with Beth. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make pie crust from scratch. So stick around. We'll get right to it. Today we're going to be needing a bowl, preferably a plastic bowl, not a glass or metal bowl. Crisco, flour, and salt. Our pie crust that we're making only calls for one pie crust. It's a bottom pie crust, so we'll only be making one instead of two. For a lot of pies, like apple pies, those need two crusts, one for the bottom and one for the top. For the pie that we're making today, we only need one. So if you do want a two crust pie, go ahead and just double this recipe. It'll be the same way of making it. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab our flour. We need 1.5 cups flour. When you measure your flour, you don't want to pack your flour into your measuring cup. You want to essentially just drop the flour in and level off the measuring cup. Great. Add half a teaspoon of salt. Now you want to make sure that this is level as well. I always just level this off above the sink. Super easy. And then you pour it into your bowl. Last but not least, we have a half a cup of shortening. And this ingredient we do want to pack in here. So go ahead and fill your half cup with shortening as much as possible. And squish it down there. Much, filling in all the gaps. And then we are going to level this off with a knife. There you go. Now pour this into your bowl as well, getting all of those sides. There's all of our ingredients. That's all we need. Now we are ready to cut our Crisco into our flour. A lot of people use a pastry cutter or 2 knives, but I think a fork works just as well. So grab a fork and we're gonna cut our Crisco into our flour. Now the way we do that is basically just pressing the Crisco into the bottom of the bowl or the side of the bowl, and that way it gets included into the mixture. We're just going to press the bottom of the fork to the side of the bowl. I like to tilt the bowl a little bit to gather the dry ingredients and just continue to whisk away until the mixture is the size of peas, and then we will add our water. So just keep going, keep going. So we're gonna add a little bit of water at a time. As you can see, I'm just sprinkling a little bit. And then keep mixing. And continue to add a little bit of water. This is gonna be about 4 to 5 tablespoons of water total, but I always do it by eyeing it, because that's how you know what consistency is right. As you can see, these pieces right over here are still pretty dry. You want to go until you have no dry pieces, until all the dough is completely forming together. So it's looking pretty good. We can give it a little squeeze test. It's coming along nicely. So once your dough is able to form into a ball, that's when you know it's done. You don't want to put too much water in it, otherwise you'll have a greasy crust. Now we're going to roll out our pie crust. Grab a handful of flour and lightly dust your surface. And place your pie dough right there in the middle. Now I always flour my rolling pin just to make it a little smoother of a rolling out process. Put a little bit of flour on top of your pie dough. You always want to start from the center of your dough and roll out. That way, your dough will stay a good circular shape. So always start in the middle, roll out. Start in the middle, roll out. And alternate which directions you are going. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more flour underneath the pie dough. This will let the pie dough roll out even further than it would have if I didn't put more flour down there. So grab your rolling pin and go towards the edge of your pie crust and pull it towards you. That will lift up your pie dough. And sprinkle some more flour under there. And release it back. Sprinkle some more flour on top. And continue to roll out until your pie dough is probably about, I'd say, 10 inches wide. That way that will give us enough for our 9-inch pie pan. To see if your pie dough is large enough, grab your pie pan and just place it in the middle here, and you should have plenty of room around your pie pan. Ours is big enough, so let's go ahead and put it in our pie pan. Go ahead and grab your rolling pin and bring it to the edge again, like we did earlier, and pull it back onto your rolling pin. Very gently. Now, place your pie pan right in the center where your dough was and roll the dough back over the pan. Looks great. So we're just gonna give this a little slack and let it nestle right there inside the pie pan. And we're gonna cut off the excess dough. You wanna cut off the dough that hits the countertop. Just grab a knife. It could be a sharp knife, it could be a butter knife, whatever, and cut off the dough when it hits the counter. This is a pretty good judgment of how much you'll need for your crust. There we go. Now we are going to form the crust. Depending on what kind of pie you are making, this is where you kind of want to stop. If you're making a pie with a filling and a top crust, you want to make sure you put the filling in now, then put the other crust on top, and you're gonna fold both of those crusts together. If you're doing a 2-crust pie, hold off. Don't do this, what I'm about to do. But if you're only making a 1-crust pie, this is how we're going to form our crust. When you are making your 2-crust pie, you can go ahead and follow these instructions after you've made your filling. So put your filling in, put your top crust over, and then this is how we're going to fold that crust. So basically you want to grab your crust, and what I like to do is I like to put my 2 fingers underneath to guide the dough into a crust shape. Go ahead and use your fingers right here, and you're gonna put them underneath your dough and use that to roll your dough. You see we kind of had a mistake right there, but now it's not a mistake. Now it's beautiful. So use your fingers and start to roll. There we go. And just continue that roll all the way around your pie. Gently let your pie crust rest on the top of your pie pan here. Now we're getting towards the end here. You see, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna include all of this together and roll that together. There we go. Now that our pie dough is in our pan, this is the time where you're going to crimp the edges. A lot of times I use my thumb and my 2 fingers to create a imprint for my crimping of my crust. But lately I just like doing this plain, just having it the way that it is. It looks really pretty. You can do whatever you want. So there you have it. Here's your pie crust. It looks a little wonky, but it turns out beautifully. All the imperfections make it a beautiful pie. Now that we have our crust made, we are going to bake this first. This is a little different than most pies. We're going to grab our pie, grab a piece of foil, and place it in here in your pie pan. Press it down lightly. It doesn't need to be hard. I don't want you to mess up your pie crust. And then pour pie weights on top of that piece of foil. If you don't know what pie weights are, that's okay. Just grab some pinto beans or black beans. Obviously not baked already. These need to be the pre-baked beans. They're hard. So pour those on top, and those will act as your pie weights. So we are going to bake this at 375 for 20 minutes, then remove the foil with the pie weights and poke holes in the bottom and bake for another 10 to 15 minutes. The reason why we're doing this is so that the crust doesn't bubble up, which it will do if we don't put the pie weights on here. So let's put that in the oven and we'll check it in about 20 minutes. All right, now our pie is out of the oven and we are going to remove the foil and the pie weights. Here's a little tip for you. This is straight out of the oven and the foil's not hot. That's always easy to do. As you can see, our pie dough is almost done, but we're gonna poke some holes in the bottom to prevent any more rising. Place this back in the oven for an additional 10 to 15 minutes until it's light brown. Here we have our finished pie crust. See, it's nice and golden brown. Set that aside and we're gonna put our filling in just a few minutes.